Ladies and gents, thank you for your patience. This will be our sovereignty panel for today. I'd like to welcome to the stage lawyer and author Grant Abraham. As well as the People's Party leader, Maxime Bernier. We also have former MP for the Conservative Party, Michelle Ferreri. We have from Citizen Portal AI, Paul Allen. And last but not least, physician Dr. Robert Malone. So this is our sovereignty panel, and there are so many different things. We went over this in the past few hours here, talking so many speakers speaking on the different angles of sovereignty, the different aspects, whether it's national sovereignty, provincial sovereignty, state sovereignty, the sovereignty of the mind, sovereignty of the home, sovereignty, the idea that you can protect yourself and your property. So I wanted to open this up on that approach and everyone's idea of what sovereignty means to you personally and what's most important of sovereignty. I'd like to go down the panel and then leave it up to you to have a discussion, and don't be afraid to interrupt each other.
Well, for me, let me just say that sovereignty is about actually ensuring that the government serves the people and that our rights and our freedoms are actually higher than the government props them up. And whatever we're going to talk about here today in terms of sovereignty, whether it be bodily autonomy or the freedom of the press or anything else, those freedoms need to exist in a relationship with the social contract with the state, ensures that we actually are sovereign as a people. And I think this is one of the fundamental conversations that's going on right now in our nation, and it's actually what's fueling the discussion about Alberta independence as well, because we're not seeing that in Canada.
Yes, I believe in the sovereignty of the individual first. That's why I'm in politics. But it's a big challenge right now these days. And when you speak about sovereignty, you must also think about freedom and responsibility. Because if you're sovereign, if you're free, you must be responsible of your actions. But that being said, with the big governments that we have in Western countries, I don't know if we are sovereign anymore because they own and they have a lot of data. Yeah,
playing you off already.
You're getting the music, Max.
Yeah, they have a lot of data about us when we are on social media. So I hope that we'll be able to have a discussion about that also. But also, the sovereignty of the individual, it's for our own health. We know what happened during COVID-19. We were not sovereign. We were not free to decide. And I'm very pleased that Dr. Malone is here today to explain that and speak a little bit about that. But yes, that's the challenge of these days, to be free, sovereign, responsible. And that's why I'm fighting for that.
Okay, this is an interesting question. Great panel. I think it's a very challenge. I think we would probably all agree on a lot of things. I think a lot of us share similar belief systems. But I think it's a challenging thing to be sovereign when we are basically a hive. We are all connected. But I make a running joke as a conservative, and I say, there's 3 things I live by. Don't tell me what to do. Don't touch my stuff. Don't tell me who to worship. We'll get along just fine. It's pretty much how I am. But I'm actually really excited about this panel because I don't know a lot of these folks, but to have this conversation, because when I look at, Grant on the end, it's like, how do we, because I know I don't want Alberta to separate, but I also appreciate why they want to separate, but I just think we're amazing together, but I think it's challenging. Then I look over here at Paul. Do you guys know this guy created Ancestry.com? Like, I know, right? But I mean, talking about AI, where are we going to go with that? And then I look at Dr. Malone and I think, you know, how do we have interoperability? How do we have systems that serve people while maintaining sovereignty? It's a challenge. It's a constant battle. And sometimes some people, when left to their own devices, aren't good. But we have to create an environment that's there. So it's a very nuanced discussion, but I'm happy to be here to talk about it.
I have two thoughts. Earlier today, I quoted the Declaration of Independence to a woman from Alberta, and she asked me, where can I look that up? And basically I said that Thomas Jefferson wrote, "We are endowed by our Creator with certain inalienable rights. Among these, life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness." The government doesn't give us any rights whatsoever. We are inherently divine creations, and we get our inalienable rights from God. And any government that thinks they can issue rights and then take them away is mistaken. And so we all had human rights and inherent dignity before any governments were ever formed. Now, the most interesting part of this sovereign panel to me today is thinking about the physical world. Property rights matter. We've talked about that today. But in the digital world, which is where the modern economy exists, data rights are human rights. And they pre-exist. They're not given to us by the state. And I'm very excited that there are states in the United States who are trying to oppose any federal or state issuance of identities, because in blockchain and Bitcoin, there's this concept of a sovereign, self-sovereign identity. And I think as important as Jefferson's beliefs were to creating modern civilization and limited government that is supposed to protect and maintain and preserve human rights, in the digital world, it's just as important that we have self-sovereign identity that pre-exists government, and that the state can endorse the identity that we inherently have based on our biometrics, based on our heartbeat, based on whatever passcodes we come up with. We inherently exist in the physical world and in the digital world, and the state cannot issue it and take it away. The state should endorse what we already have as human beings.
Of course, what he's talking about is digital ID. And what he's also talking about is the problem we have with weaponized banking that was first rolled out to the world here during the truckers' protest. And the ability of the state, once digital ID and central bank digital currency is deployed, to control your ability to engage in meaningful transactions, including purchasing food, fuel, and going about your daily life, if they decide, as they did with the Canadian truckers, that you are engaging in activities that the state disagrees with or finds inconvenient. Max Bernier kindly lobbed me a softball in talking about COVID and kind of entering or teeing up the topic of medical sovereignty. Many of you may not know that it was actually a Canadian physician who now wishes to remain anonymous because he was subjected to the re-education programs because he was administering ivermectin. But he was the one that so long ago had a Zoom call with me in which he described what was being done by the Canadian government to the Canadian people as it related to these COVID shots, and particularly to Canadian children. And he described specifically that the Canadian government was deploying the forbidden practices. We were talking earlier about the Nuremberg Code of coercion, enticement, and compulsion. That is exactly what was done, is you have been subjected to the specific things that are forbidden in the Nuremberg Code for the specific purpose of an experimental product. You and your children were subjected to coercion, enticement, and compulsion. The coercion was, of course, you couldn't be able to travel, you couldn't get on an airplane, you couldn't get on a bus, you couldn't get on a train, you couldn't engage in normal business activities unless you complied with the mandate of the state. The enticement was, we're going to give ice cream and other goodies to your kids to get them to accept these products, in many cases without parental authorization. And compulsion, of course, we all know about the mandates. This is wrong. This is fundamentally ethically wrong in the context of 20th century ethics. What's happened is in the 21st century, in this new world in which feelings and your opinions are able to shape in this virtual digital reality that we all now exist in, and particularly our kids, are able to define what is truth. And so in this new world of utilitarian bioethics, where the state is acting to enforce the greatest happiness for the greatest number, you will lose your personal autonomy. You will lose your personal sovereignty, because the sovereignty of the collective is more important than the sovereignty of the individual. That's where this goes. And this is where it's going with medical freedom, with commercial freedom, with banking freedom, with freedom online. And you know, it's up to you. As was said, these are your rights. The state doesn't own them to give or take. And you have got to stand up and say, hell no. Over.
I was just going to say, yes. So I think I'm the only Ontarian up here. And I know I come from a very liberal riding. I mean, I lost my seat to this. And I guess my question to you is, we all think that, and the autonomy and having the right and not being forced to do something because we don't believe in it. But there are a lot of people who don't. And I remember having this conversation at the door, and I guess my question is, we all know this, but how do we connect with people who maybe are persuadable to say, like, this isn't good for you, or this isn't what you want, but some people just want to be told what to do?
I think there are two major forces in the world that have an unlimited appetite for money and power. And I would say governments and corporations. And they have an advantage over all of us right now in terms of surveillance and data. How many of us have dropped Facebook and Instagram and TikTok from our phones because we don't want them to have all of our data? Very few, okay? But those who have way better mental health than those who are still connected to their sad phone, not smartphone. Sad phones increase stress, anxiety, and depression. We live in a very weird time where deaths of despair are skyrocketing and loneliness is at an all-time high. And Mark Zuckerberg connected the whole world to make it more open and connected. But he lied to 3.5 billion people and said, you have 500 friends. And most people don't have a single real-world friend anymore.
And he withheld information from you when you tried to find it, and then he got called out on it. Yeah, I know.
Yeah, so what has to happen is that the open source movement of technology, which has powered more websites than closed source and corporations and governments, there's actually a technological possibility here that will give all of us a chance to preserve our sovereignty. And that is open source AI, open source protocols, and legislation that forces these monopolies to let go of our data and give it back to us. I testified in front of the Utah State Senate, and I think the Senate and the House both passed this bill earlier this year called the Utah Digital Choice Act. It was funded mostly by a billionaire, Frank McCourt, who used to own the Dodgers, but he started a foundation and a project called Project Liberty. And he wrote a book a year ago called Our Biggest Fight. And he makes the case that data rights are human rights, and that corporations and governments shouldn't control and own all of our data. We should have data. It should belong to us, and corporations who want to use it should get our permission, and we should be able to revoke the permission whenever we want. Now, two stories I told. Sorry, this can be a bit of a story. But when I built a Facebook app in 2007, for families. I was competing with Ancestry.com. I'd already left, and I wanted to build the world's biggest genealogy database inside of Facebook. So we built an app called We're Related, got 1 million users in 29 days, and then started adding 1 million users a week. Within 2.5 years, we had 120 million users of the We're Related app. 15,000 families a day were starting to build a family tree. You could share photos privately just with your family. Well, in 2010, Facebook changed their rules and kicked our app off the platform. I had to lay off 40 people. I lost $750,000 in monthly revenue. A corporation that promises one thing and then changes the rule midstream is not fair, but nobody sued, nobody did anything. When I was CEO of Ancestry, I was competing with a company that was collecting family trees from genealogists and publishing them on CD-ROM, and I thought, my partner and I said, what if we build the Ancestry World Tree, invite every genealogist in the world to upload their data to our site, and we will promise, and we did, the data belongs to you, your genealogy that you've spent decades building, you can delete it at any time, and we will never put it behind our paywall. When I left Ancestry and no longer had a board seat, the bright people at Ancestry said, oh, 43% of all of our traffic is in the Ancestry World Tree. Let's put it behind our paywall. They did. Ancestry took control of all the data that I had promised belonged to them. The solution isn't hoping that corporate leaders will have integrity. The solution is a technology protocol like Utah State just passed, and 6 other states, including Texas and Florida, may pass, that forces the corporations to let you download your data and to adopt protocols that allow their competitors, that allow you to go to any other competing site with your data, with your social graph, and with all your history. That happened earlier this year in the state of Utah. If protocols can force corporations, and identity isn't centralized, but it's endorsed by states, because you have to do business with the state, but you exist independent of the state, I do think there's a hopeful set of technology solutions. Follow Project Liberty and follow the Utah State Digital Choice Act and hope that it spreads across the country, but also it could be adopted in provinces here as well.
When we consider that America actually has a government now that's interested in its people, I have faith and I'm encouraged by what I see going on in the U.S. But in Canada here, we have to recognize that there's a bill that's coming before our House soon, if I'm correct. It's called Bill C-2, and they're passing legislation that will allow the government to open up our mail, physical or digital, without a warrant. So the contrast in terms of the intentionality of the governments between the citizenry that's sitting on this platform is manifest and significant, because we actually have to recognize that our government is hostile to our people, and that we're dealing with a very different scenario here. And I think, Dr. Malone, you nailed it. We're dealing with a radicalized government that actually it's not just about bad policy anymore in Canada. It's about an actual intention to take us into a post-national hell where sovereignty does not exist and we're ruled by a global order.
Okay, so I'm going to say a couple of words that are pretty loaded. Benito Mussolini, who actually knew something about fascism, defined it as the alliance between basically a socialist government and industry. What you are experiencing is totalitarian socialism aligned with big business. I'm sorry, it is the definition, according to Benito Mussolini, of fascism. It's not that the right is fascist. Fascism never comes from the right. It comes from the left. It comes from socialism. And speaking as somebody from down south, what we see is a totalitarian socialist takeover of Canada. Now, I wanted to touch on your very geeky, but absolutely appropriate comments about digital freedom and sovereignty. There's a business model. It's called surveillance capitalism. It powers Facebook. It powers much of the Silicon Valley profit. It involves capturing as much data as possible about you through every possible channel, the car that you drive, the goods that you buy, every interaction you have on social media, and bundling that together to create a digital avatar of you and a digital avatar of the various categories that you represent. And these are sold as behavioral futures. Those behavioral futures are the inputs that, among other things, are used to empower the artificial intelligence that then is controlling what information is being fed to you. And I argue that here's another loaded term. Under surveillance capitalism, what they are doing is stealing part of your soul and reselling it. That's the business model. This is intrinsically evil. It meets the definition of evil, biblically. That's what's going on here. And that's what the real battle here. We can use very polite terms like sovereignty, but what's going on here is the battle for control of your soul and the ability to commodify both you and your children for profit. And it's up to you. Are you going to tolerate this? I hear the calls for autonomy. Personally, it seems to me you kind of got two choices. You can go to Florida or you can secede. I just don't see any other options.
I want to add about what you just said. Yes, we don't have a democracy anymore. You know, when you have a government that is able to, with propaganda, to manipulate the public opinion and being able to have, you know, a little majority or a strong minority of people who are manipulated. So that's what happened to us during COVID. And so you must question the democracy in our country. We must be vigilant. And the same thing with the digital national currency. That will be another way to control us. It's, you know, I was a banker before, and I know that the relationship between the clients and his or her banker, it's private. All the information, you know, when you go to your bank account on your phone and you want to look at your bank account or your credit card account, you have all your transactions, but that's private information between you and your banker. So for a digital currency, that information will go from you to the central bank. So you'll have an account at the central bank, and the central banker and the politicians and bureaucrats will know all your transactions. So you must ask how the government can do that. The government will give you something that you like. The government will tell you, oh, you want to have your pension this month? It will be easier for you and more efficient if you register at the central bank, the Bank of Canada, and you know that you'll have your pension in your account, or they will create a new social program, and they'll tell you if you want to have the benefit of that social program, go and register at the central bank, and you'll receive that money and that program on a regular basis. So they will have your data. No more privacy. And if you spend a little bit too more a month for gas, maybe you won't be able to go to the gas station and you use your debit card or your credit card because, you know, it's dangerous for the planet and you must so save the planet. So digital currency, it's information that the central banker will have and will be able to control your behavior. So we must fight that.
100% agree. Everyone say no to central bank digital currency. Never, never let that happen. It will be just one step too far. I was a Russian major in college, so I got to read Pravda while I was in the 80s. And what a wonderful country the Soviet Union was, according to Pravda. Everything was just beautiful and wonderful. So surveillance capitalism, I like how Dr. Malone said it steals part of your soul and your children's, but state-run media can do the same thing just easily. So one of the solutions, and this conference is really about not just bemoaning our existing problems, but suggesting, proposing, and creating solutions. And one of those is the citizen journalism piece that I've heard about at this conference. Every single phone allows you to become a citizen journalist. I know that with Charlie Kirk's assassination and tens of thousands of Turning Point chapters now being requested in high schools and colleges and throughout Canada, I don't know if there's a Turning Point Canada yet, but there should be thousands of Turning Point chapters, and universities and high schools in this country should have a Charlie Kirk open debate kind of a conversation. But all those participants can also become citizen journalists and capture and share the truth of what's going on, because if we don't know what's going on, if we only hear the state's side or the capitalist, surveillance capitalist news feeds that are tuned to steal our soul because the algorithm is designed to capture our attention and not help us live our best life, those are things we can actually organize and work together to promote.
It was funny, I showed Paul yesterday, we just met yesterday, and I said, do you want to see what we do in Canada? So I brought up CTV like website on Instagram. It says, people in Canada can't see this content. I'm like, yeah, that's Liberal Bill C-18. That's what happens. And so the access to the media, I guess what I was trying to get out of Dr. Malone too was the big piece of this sovereignty, two things that I'd love to hear your guys' take on. Number one, it's access to information. It's the shadow banning, and I think AI, in all of its fear that's out there, also is going to have to be used to combat that we're not seeing the information that we need to see to get a balanced approach. What I was trying to say when being from Ontario, and I realized after I said it, Maxime's also from Ontario, so sorry about that.
Quebec.
Okay, Quebec, oh, right. See, I was right.
You cannot see with my accent?
Okay, sorry, no, I didn't know where you're from. I thought you were from another planet. It's fine. Okay, so I think it's hard because number one, we want sovereignty for our home, and I think the greatest way to have sovereignty is to know that you can stand on your own 2 feet. And so when I say that about Canada in general, we can defend ourselves. That's sovereignty, right? When we went, and knowing that you have the military, the manpower, all of those things, and that happens on a home level as well. I know you're not going to break into my home if I know that I can defend myself, despite what some police chiefs will say, which means leave your keys at the front door. Another liberal policy. But I guess what I'm trying to get to, and what I was trying to get to Dr. Malone, is how do we get this information to the people? When I was running, I did a bunch of videos about C-69 in Alberta and our resource development and the fact that we have not, used what we have on the ground, and in particular in Alberta. And somebody said, I never saw any of that. And I follow you, I subscribe to you, I didn't see it, it was shadow banned. So I don't know if it's you, Paul, I don't know who wants to speak on this, but how do we use AI to combat the algorithms, to combat that they are controlling the media, that they don't even let us see it? How do we do that?
I think if Elon Musk had not purchased Twitter and turned it into X and unshadow banned thousands of people, I think the U.S. would not have changed course. I think we would have lost as many freedoms as I'm hearing we've lost here in Canada. So I think he just announced yesterday that he's open sourcing the Grok algorithm so that you can control it way better. Like in the next few weeks, he will update the Grok algorithm. I have 100 times more action on LinkedIn with their algorithm than I do on X. I'm like, do I not exist on X? Like I post and I get 27 views and I'm like, wait, I've done a few things in my career. I think I have a few things to say, but I really don't like these black box algorithms. But I think Elon's going to take more steps. There should be more platforms, more competition. If this Digital Choice Act is spread to all these other states and interoperability is forced upon the big behemoth trillion-dollar companies, then there could be hundreds of startups in the social media space that could compete because they can capture thousands or millions of users instantly who migrate from one platform to another. So there's a lot of reasons to be hopeful, but there are still problems with AI. And
I want to riff on this. So we're talking a lot about top down, and remember, there is a bottom up. So, in a very mundane way, not to blow my own horn, but my wife and I work really hard to put out an essay or content every single day of the year on Substack. And we now have viewership in the range of what CNN has on a daily basis for basically 3 people putting that together, okay? You can, and we've been doing it for about 3.5 years now. We put out thousands of essays, and the genesis of this was me realizing that Joe Rogan had not built the Joe Rogan show in a fortnight. He did it day after day after day. You can do it too. But beyond that, X, your comment about X, X is not a perfect space. The shadow banning is an interesting term because it reflects your point of view. What you're experiencing is called small rooming. Small rooming, okay? And you are operating, people need to understand that most social media platforms are created by the American intelligence community, and they are weapons. They are weapons for controlling information and controlling people. They were actively deployed and behind the color revolutions in Arab Spring. That's what they're for, okay? And your experience of shadow banning is actually algorithmic control of who you're able to reach, and that's controlled at a bunch of different levels. But I want to take that another step. We're now moving into an era of the phrase, you're probably familiar with it, is the splinter net, where the splinter net, where the internet is being splintered globally. And for those of us that grew up with the hope and the vision of a egalitarian, universal, international, free exchange of information space, sorry guys, that went the way with a lot of things. With the imposition of the Digital Act in the UK and in European Union is happening here in Canada, the internet is being splintered. It's being splintered by nation state. It's being splintered by culture. And I don't think there's a way to stop that. It is happening. But what I want to share is that with that comes an opportunity. If they're going to create barriers to information transfer across national boundaries, if you're going to have a Canadian internet information space, then view that as a business opportunity, my friends. Okay? You have an opportunity to build the internet for Canada and get to it. Get on these apps, do it, and own that thing. Don't let the state own it. Thank you.
We would love to have Citizen Portal Canada. In the U.S., almost 2 million articles have been generated by AI from meeting transcripts at the city, county, state, and federal level in the last 3 years. Hundreds of thousands of articles a month. It's all searchable. You can find out exactly what any elected official said on any topic, but we have zero presence in Canada. Maybe there should be a Give, Send, Go campaign to bring a little bit of funding so that Canada could have its own, but Alberta could have its own. I was told that Edmonton has some pretty good open access to city meetings, et cetera. So we're happy to advise and provide the tools so that you all could have a very powerful platform for citizens.
And figure out who the political alliances are that are going to be establishing the terms and conditions for Canadian or local splinter internets and control those people. I'm sorry. Get in there and own it. And don't be shy about it. Okay, the other side's doing it. You ought to do it too.
I think what you're doing is exactly what needs to happen. And Paul and I had this conversation. The biggest problem is what people believe, and then they get into the position of power and they push their belief and ideology. But what we've really lost in this country is accountability. And so what I love what you're doing in that it's access. It's like leveling the playing field. Like now you can access it. So when you ask them a question and they don't answer, when you try to access information, right now even ATIPs, I don't know how many people know what an ATIP is, but anybody can do it. It sometimes takes time, or they give you resistance, or they do all of this kind of stuff. This, I think, what you're saying of Citizens Portal would remove that barrier, and it would be access to information. My only concern, and if I leave it, I see the time is almost up. If I want to leave it with maybe Grant or somebody, but there is a genuine fatigue. I do not believe that our brain was designed to absorb the amount of information that we are exposed to on a daily basis. And I really felt this from the people when I'm very fortunate. I get to talk to thousands of people, and they were very fatigued. They didn't know what to do, what to watch, what to believe, who to trust. And that's why I think it's really important when you find somebody, and that's why I think communities are going to be the most valuable thing in the world. Somebody you trust, being, a subscriber to Dr. Malone, if he's your guy, to Paul, to whomever, having a community and actually also following people who do not think the way you think is very important. Keep your mind sharp. Don't just listen to people who agree with you. That's no fun, and it's frickin' boring.
But can I close? You said something earlier that triggered me that I didn't follow up on. As we were talking about Charlie Kirk, the thing about Charlie is he engaged in a retail one-on-one transaction with everybody. And if you remember the teaching of Matthias Desmet, the thing that sets up, that opens the door to totalitarianism is social isolation. And the thing that you can do at a retail, at a street level, is you can engage with your neighbors. Just whether you like them or don't like them, engage with them. Build community, whether it's through church, whether it's in the grocery store line or whatever. Don't be a separate, isolated individual. Be part of your community at the street level. Engage with people. Talk with them, even if they don't agree with you.
Like at a conference.
Like at a conference. I want to thank the panel for being the easiest panel to moderate ever. I didn't even have to speak up. So a big thanks to Grant Abraham, Maxime Bernier, Michelle Ferrari, Paul Allen, and Dr. Robert Malone.